This is Gautam Nagesh, founder and editor of stiffjab.com, with 5 things you need to know about the Mayweather Pacquiao fight. So let's start with, for people who maybe aren't huge boxing fans, why is this such a big deal?
Quite simply because it's the 2 best and most popular fighters in the world finally getting in the ring together more than 5 years after people first started calling for this fight. Mayweather established himself as the sport's biggest fighter. He's fought in the highest grossing fight of all time against Oscar De La Hoya, and then he retired. Once he retired, Manny Pacquiao came in and became essentially his replacement as the pound-for-pound king and the most popular and best fighter in the sport. Mayweather returned in 2009, and ever since then, people have been waiting for this fight and assuming that it wouldn't happen. So that is basically the reason.
So why did it take so long if the interest was evident back in 2009?
That depends on who you ask. Essentially, the reason is that both fighters were able to make a lot of money fighting other people, people who were perceived as not as risky. That didn't always work out. Manny Pacquiao was knocked out viciously by Juan Manuel Marquez a couple years ago in the 4th fight that these two have fought. Floyd Mayweather, on the other hand, has looked really good in every fight that he's had, and he's won and dominated. So what's happened is that neither fighter really has anyone else left seen as a viable opponent. And this fight, given the amount of money it could generate, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 million, it was really a no-brainer in terms of business.
So Manny was knocked down, Floyd never was. Does Manny have a chance?
Yes. Floyd is definitely the favorite. He should be, but Manny is, I think, a liver underdog than anyone else Floyd has fought since De La Hoya. Pacquiao is still extremely fast, a great puncher, extremely hard puncher, and really the second best fighter in the world. So if anyone poses a risk to Floyd Mayweather, I think Pacquiao is it. With that being said, Pacquiao is going to be the smaller man on fight night. I think he's going to be slower. And the burden is really going to be on him to make something happen by either knocking Floyd down or knocking him out. Otherwise, it would be tough, in my opinion, for him to win a decision.
So, delving a little bit deeper, what do you have to say about the perception that many people have that Floyd Mayweather ducks opponents or ducks fights, or that he's highly selective in?
I think highly selective is pretty close to true. Floyd is his own manager, and a manager's job is to get a fighter the maximum payday for the minimum risk. And Floyd is an excellent manager. He has fought a lot of big names, but many of them he fought on the downside of their careers. De La Hoya, Sugar Shane Mosley, or Miguel Cotto. These are all Hall of Fame type of fighters, but Floyd is excellent at picking a time when his opponent is starting to show cracks and then taking the fight then. The same is true in this case. Pacquiao, since being knocked out by Marquez, is not the same fighter. And he's definitely not the Pacquiao of 2009, when many people considered him the best fighter in the world. Floyd, on the other hand, because of his style of fighting, because of his legendary conditioning, perhaps because he's got fewer distractions, he looks essentially the same as he did several years ago. So this could likely be another case of Floyd deciding that Pacquiao looks more vulnerable than he has, while still being viewed as viable enough to produce the maximum revenue for the fight.
So, finally, what do you think is going to happen at the fight?
Anything can happen in a fight of this magnitude, especially with someone like Pacquiao, who is a truly dynamic fighter. With that said, Floyd Mayweather has dominated boxing for the last 10 years because he is perhaps one of the most technically gifted fighters of all time. I think unless Pacquiao does something really extraordinary, catches him with a hard shot, or just compels himself to fight at a furious pace, throwing 100 punches around from the outset, I see Floyd Mayweather taking control of the fight, landing his right hand, keeping space between him and Pacquiao, avoiding Pacquiao's flurries for the first few rounds, and then really committing to his attack and either winning a close decision or possibly stopping Pacquiao at the end of the fight.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, and follow G Nagesh or stiffjab.com for live updates of the fight.